Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Shouting into the Void. I'll put up top that there may be some internet issues because, of course, there is. There almost always is. So please bear with us whenever they happen. But this is the weekly show where myself and Liam talk all things Doctor Who. Well, all things this episode of Doctor Who, because unfortunately it's only episode by episode. We started at series 1 of New Who, which originally aired back in 2005 and is still airing to this very day. We have made it through 3 whole series, and we're now starting series 4 officially.
Hooray!
Last week we kind of started with the Christmas special because my Blu-rays say it's series 4, but BBC iPlayer doesn't say it's series 4, so who knows. But we are starting series 4 properly now with Partners in Crime. This one sees the 10th Doctor, played by David Tennant, investigating Adipose Industries, who are a fat diet pill company where they're supposedly helping people lose weight. And also investigating this company is one Donna Noble, who you may remember from The Runaway Bride. She is returning as the companion of this series, played by Catherine Tate. And yeah, they eventually team up about half an hour into the episode. They finally get together and try and stop this alien threat that exists at the moment with this. Oh, I don't even know. I don't know if Mrs. Foster's a human or something, but Mrs. Foster is using her
Matron Cophelia.
Yes,
yeah,
that one. She's using the human population to conceive adipose. Is that the right word?
Let's just say create
adipose out of the fat that the people that are taking the pill are using. Yeah, I mean I guess that's the basic plot of the story. So what did you think of this first episode?
It was good. I enjoyed it. Very solid start. I think as often is the case when you're introducing a new companion, well, reintroducing a companion in this case, plot is taking more so the back seat, and it's all about just reintroducing us to the character, her family in this case as well, what she's kind of been up to. And yeah, just it was the teasing really of them finally reuniting, just as they kind of do when like the final act kind of kicks in. So I like that they did it in a different sort of way to like how he first met Martha at the start of the last series. It feels like yesterday we were covering Smith and Jones. So what on earth's happening here? But here we are. And yeah, overall, I think it's a very solid start to the season. I liked the kind of, for the most part, I liked the light-hearted-ish tone they were going for. And yeah, some interesting setup as well for the seasons to come.
Much setup.
Yeah, a few little missing planet references and bee disappearing
Atmos.
References and Atmos, little
Rose.
Easter eggs and Rose turning up at the end. And oh my goodness. So yes, I really enjoyed revisiting this one. It was always one I looked on back like as an opener, being like, yeah, that was a pretty strong one. One of my favorite ones of the RTD era. I think that still rings true. It was a really solid episode. So yes, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's pretty same with me. I enjoyed overall. I've definitely got, it was easier to come up with the positives than it was the negatives this week, which is always a good sign. I do have some issues with it, which we always have issues because, there's pretty much never a perfect episode of Doctor Who. But yeah, overall, this was a good reintroduction to our characters, a good jumping off point for the series. Probably not a good jumping off point if you're a new viewer, because there's, quite a couple of bits in this, reference the past couple of series. Obviously, right at the end, there's a big reference to the past couple of series.
Yeah, and we, if you've been watching from the start, you'd know who Donna is.
Yeah, but I think they do a good job of reintroducing Donna to new viewers as well, though, I think, in this one.
Yeah.
Which is good. And obviously we've got a decent supporting cast. I think Donna's family are a particular highlight. yeah, I just think it was a solid opener. Sets up for what I remember being a pretty good series overall. So it's started off well. Let's hope it continues it.
Yes.
We'll see. But as with always, the format of this is we have 3 positives ish and 3 negatives ish. And we always start with the positives, and then we always hammer the episode for its negatives.
Hell yeah.
That's just what happens, but at least we're balanced.
It's true.
So yes, what is your first positive?
The Doctor and Donna's relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Ten and Donna is one of my favorite TARDIS teams. I think it's easily my favorite companion that Ten has in his tenure.
Tenure.
I love that. I get it. But yeah, I really enjoyed the kind of slow burn of them finally reuniting in this one. Then when they do, I think the chemistry is just instantly there. It helps, obviously, they've worked together before in a very meta way because they did the previous episode together. So that's a nice reflection of the Doctor and Donna's relationship as well. And yeah, it's just something a bit different. It's not like he's in love with the companion, they're in love with him, then he's not in love with the companion, but they're in love with him. It's just, there's none of that at all, which I really do enjoy. It's a breath of fresh air. It's kind of the first time that they've done that in Doctor Who thus far in the new series. So I liked that kind of changing up of it. And yeah, just kind of the more lighthearted nature to it. Bittersweet reflection of how things end up for this relationship at the end of this series. It's kind of sad to see it start like this, and you're like, oh god, it's just pain after all this. But yeah, I just enjoy the kind of banter between them and the chemistry between them. And they can be very funny together. I think they do bring out the comedic nature. Obviously, Catherine Tate is a professional comedian, so that helps. But it's nice to see the 10th Doctor actually be quite funny. I think Donna brings that out in him a lot, just by the very nature of what she's all about. But they also have some more serious moments in there as well, like when they're catching up about Martha and Rose and all of that, when he's trying to fix the exposition machine. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I really like the dynamic between them and Donna having regretted turning the doctors off the down, and then they can all sort it all out, save the day, and then they fly off. And I just like that Donna's kind of prepared herself for that meeting, just in case it would come about. And he's clearly learned as well from series 3, and he's like, I don't want things to get too complicated. I just want a buddy. I want a pal.
I want a mate. You what, mate?
You're not mate with me, sunshine. And yeah, I just like the very different dynamic that the two of them have. It is a breath of fresh air for the new series at this point. And yeah, they're great to watch together in this episode and all the episodes to come in future. And the fact that they're set to stand out for me, even though they're only together for the last 18 minutes of the episode, is quite good, really. It just shows how much that pairing works.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think, I completely agree. They are probably my favorite Doctor and companion duo overall, I would say. Mm-hmm. Including future and past Doctors, which says a lot about the chemistry that they have. And it starts in this episode. You see it's evolved from the Runaway Bride. Donna's a lot more confident in herself than she was back then. Obviously, she kind of has to be after what happened. But yeah, and sort of going off of that, my sort of first positive is their reunion, their meeting scene, where
that's my third positive.
There you go, where they're across the boardroom. And I just remember watching it when the first time I watched it, it was great. And I watch it every time, and I'm like, this is still like excellent. It's well hilarious. Done. Yeah, I think it helps. Obviously, Catherine Tate being a comedian, she can do those kind of things, but it doesn't, it feels natural. It's not like, oh, she's a comedian, so she has to do this kind of funny thing. It feels
and she improvised all of that, as I found out today.
There we go then. Even better.
But we will, obviously.
Yes.
Kind of spoiled a fun fact there, but it's relevant to the conversation.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. We've spent the whole episode sort of teasing that they're this close. They're literally like they're 2 cubicles away from each other.
Yeah.
Like the whole time they're just around the corner, almost there. And then to get this is a big payoff for the audience, and it's funny, it's well executed. It lightens the mood, I think, of what is quite a I don't know, like a not a boring sort of section, but kind of run of the mill villain sci-fi explaining their plot type thing. It changes that scene, and
Yeah.
I think that really helps. It helps the episode, and it kicks off series 4 with setting the tone of what the relationship's going to be throughout the series, which is excellent to see. Luckily,
Yes.
So did you want to talk about that now then, if that's your third?
Yeah, go on then. Why not? Yeah, it's established so well because we're kind of aware of Donna by that point anyway. And even if you have started with series 4, that's about 25 minutes ish of you kind of knowing her and what she's about. You can kind of get a sense of her, and you can get a sense of what the Doctor's like. And then you've also had Miss Foster throughout the episode as well, who's very straight faced and very just outspoken in that way. Very much the kind of straight man in the comedy, or straight woman in comedy in this sense, I suppose. So you have all those characters in place, and you know what they're like, and then you get to that scene, and it's paid off in a very a brilliant way, with catching them being like, am I interrupting you? It's so good because she's like, Donna's just so over the top. The Doctor's just completely bewildered and confuzzled, and then you can just, I like how you can kind of hear the conversation going on in the background that Miss Foster's having with Penny.
And it just slowly
and
stops.
Then it just slowly stops, and it's something that you can pick up on when you rewatch it, because you may not, you probably aren't supposed to notice that the first time. And then when Donna's like, you just see us there. It's acted so well, and I think it could have easily fallen flat on its face. And we will come on to times where I felt like that did happen. But yeah, I really, really love that reunion scene. It's it's kind of unique in a sense anyway, because a lot of the time in Doctor Who, the companion meets the Doctor, they have their adventures, they leave, and they never meet again. So to see the Doctor meet someone again now and have like a reunion in that sense, something a bit more unique for Doctor Who. And I just like how they kind of execute it in an even more unique way by making it quite comedic. And it's just performed so well. Absolutely hilariously done. The setup, the dun when they first see each other in the score, that the whole music for that scene's really well done. And I love how that's all put together. I could watch that again and again, and it always puts a smile on my face. It's definitely a big highlight of the episode for me.
Yeah, I think when people think of this episode, it's the first thing they think about. Probably when they think about series 4, it's probably one of the ones they think about as well. If you were to just think of it or search series 4 Doctor Who, I bet, in the Google search, one of the first ones will probably be Donna in that window, which wouldn't surprise me because it's quite iconic, I think, at this point. Excellent scene. And that's why it's obviously on both of our positives. My second positive is, in fact, the adipose.
Oh,
because I just think they're such a left field villain. It's not. I mean, I'm taking out the Miss Foster aspect of it because I don't think that's as strong.
Yeah,
but just from their design to how they're created to the reasons why they're created, which gets a bit more payoff later on. And it's just such a strange thing to see, and it's something that Doctor Who has always done. We're gonna convert humans into whatever. It's been done with the Cybermen, it's been done with Daleks, it's been done with all sorts of things. But if left to run, I don't know whether it was always going to be the plan of we'll kill the humans to get this. I think it seems to me it was always just a case of we're only going to take the fat and then piss off.
Yeah.
Which is why
when the Doctor shows up, they're like, oh well, we need to hurry this along.
So it's not even a villainous plot. It's just a species trying to survive. They look great. I mean, I'll touch on the CGI because sometimes it's not the best. We'll touch on that later, but overall, the design, I don't think, because they're that pudgy, smooth sort of thing, the CGI isn't always as noticeable for it being bad.
I think I've got that plushy adipose here somewhere.
I'm not surprised. I have like a tiny one somewhere, like a really small one. Because
I've got
you
like
can get
the
them
big
everywhere.
beanie one.
Yeah. See, there's so much, and that's probably why that I like them, is because they're marketed so heavily, or they were at least after.
Yeah, that's why they were designed like that. So
yeah,
easy
yeah.
to make. Yeah.
And it makes a difference to it being some big scary type of monster. And it also gives the Doctor the opportunity to show how much he's changed since last meeting Donna, with the first time he literally killed all the children.
He drowned the spider kids, yeah.
But this time he lets the children live. Woohoo!
Until
yeah. And
Screedy just kills them all.
Yeah, it's leaving. Nope.
When Time Lord Victorious happens, he just goes and kills them.
Could you imagine?
I shouldn't have let you get away.
Should let you go. But yeah, I like it. I think they're just a great design, and it's a very unique thing to have in the show. We don't, because they're not. You can't even describe them as a monster or a villain, really, because they're not really the villains. As mentioned in the episode, they can't help where they came from. The real villain is Miss Foster and the parents, maybe. But yeah, it was a good little monster for what is a fairly light-hearted opener. It didn't need a big bad.
I don't think it would have worked as well if it hadn't been in the opening episode as like a villain. I think they would have been looked on much more critically.
Yeah, I would imagine so. But yeah, so what is your second / technically third one?
Yes. The ending scene where the TARDIS appears over Wilf and he's like, oh, it's the blue box. It's so wholesome. I would die for Wilf. I love him. I love the setup to that moment where she's kind of saying, if you see a blue box out there, just shout for me. And he does, and it's just sweet, and I love it. And yeah, some of it doesn't seem to make sense later on because he's like, oh, it's him, and he recognizes the Doctor, and then he doesn't remember that in Sontaran one when they meet again. He's like, oh, hang on, it's you. Didn't realize it was you.
But I don't know whether that means he didn't realize it was him working on the car, because I suppose you could be like, oh, it's you that's doing this, maybe.
Yeah, but then they were like, oh, but we met on Christmas, and it seems a bit weird.
Yeah.
We can talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, it's just a very heartwarming kind of ending to the episode that I really enjoyed. After Matron Ophelia went splat, and a couple of the adipose got splattered by the car running them over, which is a horrible sound.
I know, it's terrible.
F in the chat for those ones. The brother and sister being run over or something. But yeah, it's a really lovely kind of image, just the Doctor and Donna waving him off as they fly off for adventures, and him just like cheering and screaming. Yes, it's the second episode in a row to end on an old man like celebrating and shouting in the middle of a field. Yeah. But I think this one looks infinitely better. It does help with hindsight, obviously, because Wilf goes on to be a fucking legend. But even just as it is, I think it's a very sweet scene, very well paid off from the setup. In one of my other favorite scenes of the episode, which was Donna and Wilf at the telescope talking about life and all of that. But yeah, it's a very wholesome little moment. There's just something about this. I get like Boomtown kind of vibes from Partners in Crime. I feel like when I watch it, it's that kind of similar comfort I think that it provides me. Because I've just noticed like normally I have like characters or monsters in like my positives and stuff, or like the aesthetics of it or whatever. But I actually have like a couple of big, long, distinct scenes in my positives for this one. So I think that kind of shows the strength of the episode as well in that own little way. So the plot is, it's a basic bitch plot. Let's not lie. It's nothing special. But little moments like that really kind of make it and hold it together. They're kind of the emotional glue. And that ending scene is definitely one of my favorite moments. Lots of really good ones. But yeah, I think it's just a really nice way of ending that episode and kind of setting Donna off on her way for some cool adventures.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And sort of that links into my third positive, which is just Donna and her family dynamic in general. Obviously, Sylvia is a bitch, but she's great. You can, because I think it's because everybody can like relate to that. Everyone's at least either got that relative or has seen that relative or has had those moments with someone. And everyone obviously always has a relative that is also their favorite that they go and talk to about whatever. And that's obviously what Wilf is. I think just the whole dynamic there is quite relatable for most of the audience watching it. It's it's not your cliche family dynamic, because it's a daughter, a mum, and then her dad. So it's three generations living in this house, which is strange in itself. And there are obviously behind the scenes reasons why that is, which we'll probably come on to. But it's a strange dynamic, but it's also very sort of very relevant and something that everyone can relate to. Which I think helps. And yeah, it's just Donna takes no shit from Sylvia, and Sylvia does the same. And Wilf gets thrown everything, but takes it on his chin, and is just like so supportive of everyone and everything. Which basically the opposite of Sylvia. But I feel they both would go to the ends of the earth for Donna if they had to, which at sometimes they do, maybe in this series. And yeah, I think again it sets up. In this episode, it easily sets up a better family than the Jones family that we had last year, I would say.
Yeah. Like Sylvia is like, she's a Francine-esque character in that way, but she's not boring. And I think Francine is quite boring. No offense, Francine.
Yeah, I think
boring.
It's also because I think Francine comes off as just like being in it for herself. She doesn't want Martha to do this because Francine doesn't want her to do it, kind of thing. It's going to impact her, whereas Sylvia's more like she's just trying to get Donna to do something and keep moving and stuff like that, which I think is kind of the opposite. Although they're both similar in how they go about things. But yeah, I think it sets up the dynamic that we're going to get throughout this series. It obviously gives some backstory to where Donna's coming from and why she would still want to leave home. And it also sets up that Wilf has no idea what happened with Lance, and apparently no one does. He just, I guess, disappeared. I don't know, vanished.
Yeah, because like, oh, bless him. So I'm guessing she like, oh, he got killed by the web shooting electricity or something.
Maybe
that's what she said.
Yeah, because it can't be that he ditched her, can it? Because then that wouldn't be like
he betrayed me and got eaten by some baby spiders, and then my friend drowned them.
Yeah.
So even if he had managed to find a place to escape, he drowned.
Yeah. But yeah, I just think that whole dynamic is great. I like the characters, and I look forward to seeing them more throughout the series. I think we get 4 more episodes with them. Wow, 6 if we include the end of time, but that's not this series.
Yeah, so we have Sontarans, then Turn Left, and the finale. Yeah.
Okay, so 5-ish episodes then, which is good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Have you got any other positives you want to touch on?
Don't know, do I? I don't think so, no. Oh, well, shout out to the taxi driver because he made me laugh.
Oh, yeah. Fair enough. In my other positives, I quite like the lift scene, the window cleaning scene. I think that's quite good. It's a good action set piece without having to do much, I don't think. Although maybe it goes on for a little bit too long, but I still quite enjoy it.
And he can't open the window because she deadlocked it, but he can then open it to let Donna in.
I think it's because he uses her sonic pen, isn't it, to open it, and then that he breaks the deadlock. I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean, but I do like it, and it's quite a unique action set piece, I think. I like the little hints we get towards the series arc that only really pay off once you've seen the series as a whole.
Yeah.
Especially things like the Atmos, the orphan planet was lost, the bees are disappearing. Rose, I guess, is the biggest thing. Like, hey, something's bigger going on. So that's not really like a tease. It's more of a in your face. Here you go.
Yeah.
But I like the other little teases, and I also quite like 10 sort of finally acknowledging what he didn't see with Martha in series 3.
Yeah.
Which was quite a nice touch. And again, it showed more character development. Don't know when he did that character development. I guess it was just after Martha told him. And then he was like, okay, better not do that again. But but we don't know how long. I'm
not going to do that again. Then he snogs Carmen over twice.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was straight after. It's fine, but we don't know how long it's been.
After, that's fine.
We don't know how long it's been since Voyage of the Damn Partners in Crime. He could have been doing other stuff since then. Which is all right. So we will go on to the negatives now, and I'll touch on my one first. there's not a big supporting cast, I don't think, in this episode, which can be an
No.
issue when Penny is the worst bit of it.
Yeah, she's not great.
I mean, like, I
Nearly our new companion.
yeah, yeah. I don't think she would have been this character if she was the companion. She probably would be a
God,
little
I
bit
hope
more
not.
tolerable. But like it plays into the whole thing. Speaking as a former journalist, it plays into the whole thing of just putting journalists into a poor light and showing that they're not the best and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't like it for that point, but also I just think she's not very nice.
No.
You know,
She's only there for the fake out, really.
yeah, yeah.
That's her purpose. No,
She's
they
there.
don't know what to do with her outside of that.
Yeah, she's there so that Donna doesn't get captured and so that we can find out what the plot is.
Yeah.
You know, why the villain's there. Which is a shame. I'm sure you could have done something else for that, but then it's the whole, you know, she's just not she's not good enough, I don't think. Especially when like right at the end she's like, oh, I'm telling on you or whatever like that. Well, I'm like, oh, fine, whatever. I don't care. It's just not she's not great. And you know, speaking as that used to be something that I did as a job, being that kind of reporter doesn't get you the best stories because people know that you're not very nice and are less likely to talk to you. So it's a shame, but at least she's only in this one episode.
Yeah.
So yes, that's my first sort of negative. It's not a major one. It's more like a nitpick and a bit like, I don't care. But luckily she doesn't have too many lines, really.
Yeah.
You know, she's only in there. She's in there for a bit of comedic effect when she gets tied up again, which I think I find quite funny because it's hilarious.
Yeah. You'd have thought she'd just have a shot at that point.
Yeah, you'd think you just take the files and leave. You would take the files and leave. You wouldn't sit there looking through them when they could come back at any point. But either way, that's still theft, and that's not what journalists should do. But yes, that's my sort of first one. So what is your first one?
The resolution, I think, is a bit
What, where she just like drops or the
way they like stop. Yeah, when they stop, like all the people like being completely converted and stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, it's incredibly convenient that Donna has the second thing.
Yep.
But even then, it's very difficult to make it interesting to watch when the Doctor's just putting some levers, pressing some buttons, and Miss Foster's doing the same thing. You know, it's kind of the prequel to The Power of Three, really. That's how I kind of see it.
Mhm.
You know, it's just pointing the Sonic at the screen, but like, yes, we've solved it.
Mhm.
And you know, I know the plot wasn't like the big part of the episode, but you're kind of trying to make the statement, oh, 1 million people are going to die, and it's like, oh, I have this other necklace, which is very loosely defined in this episode.
Mhm.
Because they say it's like one touch and it's like attached to the client, but Donna was the one who touched it and Stacey hadn't, and yet she got Stacey to, I don't know. So yeah, it's a bit of an underwhelming, I think, kind of ending to it. I don't mind, like, I like the resolution with the Miss Foster thing and they just drop her and stuff because that's quite funny.
Even if she does the Scooby-Doo drop where she stops and then falls.
That I hate that. We will come on to that. But yeah, I just think that whole thing is just like, it's so over dramatic and everything. Like, you know, David Tennant chewing the scenery in the best way, like, 1 million people are gonna die, and it's just like beep boop boop. Here's a necklace, hooray! Yeah, it's just a bit convenient, bit anticlimactic. Not my favorite kind of part.
I think that's fair,
But,
and I think you know it is because it's, as you mentioned, the plot isn't really the focus of the episode. It's a similar thing to like the MRI is gonna. Oh, I've just turned off the MRI. There we go. The MRI has been turned off. It's fine now. We can go back. I feel, you know, it's not the focus. The focus is obviously the new companion coming in, which is fine. You can have that as long as it doesn't happen every single episode, which I don't think it really does in this series at least. But yeah, I do get what you mean. So sort of my second negative, I felt it moved a bit slow at times. You know, there was unnecessary cuts to a face or some hands, or it lingered on a couple of shots. One specifically is when the Doctor first gets into the window cleaning lift, and he like slowly takes him down, and we get like 3 shots of him descending. I'm like, We know where's else is he going to go? He's going to go down. We don't need to see him like Sonic it and come down and then keep going and then cut to the roof looking down and then cut to him going, oh, we don't need to see that, and we don't need to see, just lingering. It just lingers too much. When it does the pan out of the Doctor and Donna being in like there, it shows them both, then it shows the top, then it shows them both again, then it shows the top, and then it shows them moving, and then it shows them both again. I'm like, you only need the one shot of them there and then leaving. You don't need to keep cutting to and from them. So I think there is a bit of it's probably padding, but it slows the episode down a few times for me, which is a shame, because then when you get to the scenes where they're supposed to be slow, like the Wilf and Donna scene, you're kind of like, oh, another slow scene, where you're, especially when you've just had that, you're like, oh, adipose, you got to sort of slowly go through it all again. But it's fine. Doctor Who's not necessarily known for its pacing, and it doesn't, it doesn't take away too much from the episode, because I can get around it pretty easily, which is fine. So what is your third negative? Third?
My second negative. Yeah, my second. Now, normally, when they tell a joke or whatever in an episode, it's fine if it doesn't necessarily land. But when the episode is a comedic episode, like I feel like this one is, there's just a lot of it that kind of didn't work for me per se, or asked more questions than it probably needed to do. So there's just a few issues like that, really. If it still feels like they're finding their feet with like Donna as a character, like how far do they push that? Because there are still the moments where like, well, that's just Catherine Tate, that's not Donna. Like the super like expressions and stuff, and that does kind of bleed in again in the finale, but they kind of work through that a bit throughout the series. And some of that I'm just like, that takes me out of it a bit, because I'm like, oh, that's just Catherine Tate, that's not Donna. And yeah, Miss Foster doing the Scooby-Doo Wile E. Coyote running off the cliff, staying in midair for a bit and then falling. I mean, it just, I can see kids enjoy that. It's just personal taste more than anything. And I get that the episode is trying to be quite lighthearted and funny, so it's not like, oh, it's completely out of place with the rest of the episode. It's just, when there's a scene like the reunion scene with them that I think really, really works. I think just when stuff doesn't work, I need to point that out as well. So there's that. I'm not a big fan of. And they have the whole Sonic pen gag, like, oh, it's very unlikely that she's got a Sonic device, and it cuts to her having one. That's funny, but then it's just like, why does she have that? Where does she get that from? What is the point of her having that specifically? Because she doesn't really use it.
Just for the joke.
Just for the joke. And then I'm just
so they can say, sorry, we don't give out free pens.
Yeah, and then they're just like, but like they don't really explain that kind of part of her backstory then, which could have been quite interesting to learn, like why in her role and she needs to perform, why does she have this Sonic device or whatever. So yeah, there's a few moments like that fall a bit flat for me in terms of comedy. It might have worked for me when it first aired, because I was a lot younger. I can't remember, to be quite honest. But looking back on it now, it's just like, no, I'll just watch the reunion scene again, please. So yeah, a few moments like that kind of take me out of it sometimes. But that's subjective. Comedy is very subjective in that sense. Not all of it's going to land, and that's okay. But when the episode is kind of quite comical, and that's what it's going for, it is a bit silly and ridiculous. I think it's worth noting when some elements don't work for you.
Yep, I think that's fair. Yeah, I think I don't have any specific, like, sometimes comedy isn't for everyone. If a joke doesn't land, I'm not going to be on the internet like, oh, that wasn't funny, because I just didn't find it funny. It's fine. Other people can enjoy it. And like I said, I'm sure when I was younger, I found it hilarious and I really liked it. And I'm all for slapstick stuff. And when it's in, when it fits into the episode, which I think most of the time it does, because this isn't a deadly serious episode. I think it fits in mostly, but I do get where you're coming from. At least it's not Love and Monsters. It's at least, that's the one thing.
It's true.
So my sort of third one, and I touched on it a bit earlier, is the sort of CGI of the adipose.
Yeah, that's mine as well.
Yeah, I mean, when the individual ones, I think look fine. They look,
Yeah.
yeah, they're pretty good. It's only when there's like the mass CGI huddle of them walking down the
Yeah,
street, I
that's
think,
that's why I put like the wide shots when there's loads of them.
yeah,
It's like if you really like, even if you just look at them in detail and like
mm,
one specifically, like oh
it's just a few pixels and that's it.
yeah,
You know, I mean, the ship that comes to pick him up, I think that's great. I think the shot of Wilf on the hill where it's floating, he
yeah,
doesn't say, I think that's also pretty good.
yeah,
Um, and like the other one is when like it's coming out of the skin. I think that doesn't necessarily work. It's very like Nestine conscious, like that kind of fluidity.
yeah.
Um,
How does it burst through the skin and
it
not burst through
just,
the skin?
it
It's
just
madness.
what it does.
Ah!
Yeah, exactly. Um, and then I appreciate when she's like, "This is an adipose," and just opens her drawer and picks it up and puts it on her desk.
Like, it's lying there in darkness. Like, what's going on?
There's like 10 of them in that drawer. She just picks one up. There you go. But yeah, they work
I'm
individually.
free.
But it's just when they're yeah, the big masses of them, I just don't think work, especially when they're like superimposed on real street corners. And it doesn't help that it's a dark, like it's a it's nighttime, and these are these white things that stand out in the darkness. But yeah, I can look past it because that's only like really right at the end, so it's not a major thing really for me. Our third negative was the CGI of the mass adipose. Yeah, have you got anything else to add on the CGI?
Not really, but yeah, I like individually, I was actually quite surprised at
Hmm.
how well some of it held up. I was like, yeah, that looks all right actually. But yeah, as soon as there was like wide shots of loads of them, I was like, that is just. I know by design they are white blobs, but my
Yeah.
God, were those some white blobs?
Yeah, that's fair.
Like wide shots of loads of them, and you can just see them all like doing exactly the same movement if you like look at them. Like, oh no. But,
Yes, it's unfortunate. But yeah, have you got any other sort of negative points you want to touch on before we wrap that up?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
No.
nice. Neither do I, to be honest. So yeah, in that
Hooray.
case, what before the internet completely crashes, what are the fun facts?
Yes. Okay. This episode was dedicated to Howard Atfield, who passed away shortly after filming his scenes for this episode as Jeff Noble, Donna's dad. As Jeff was to have been a recurring character that season, the producers chose to remove Atfield's scenes, refilm them with Bernard Cribbins, retconning his character Stan from Voyage of the Damned to Wilfred Mott, aka Donna's grandfather. Atfield's scenes can be viewed, however, on the complete series 4 box set. You can check them out. They are quite wholesome. Rusty Davies originally planned to introduce a new companion named Penny Carter in this episode. When Catherine Tate revealed her interest in returning as Donna, the idea was dropped and Penny was made a supporting one-off character in this episode instead. And thank the Lord she came back instead. Yes, well, technically it is supporting, unfortunately. Now, this fun fact may not have aged very well because we've just torn it to pieces, but the shots of the adipose in London streets were extremely complex for the CGI team, the Mill, to achieve, taking more time to make them than any CGI shot thus far in New Who. They ended up using a software called Massive, created by Weta Digital, who created the CGI for the Lord of the Rings films.
Oh, well, that's why
like the Lord of the Rings films.
That's why the Lord of the Rings films rely mainly on practical effects,
yes,
not special effects.
So there you go. But they tried. The name adipose was taken from the real life scientific term for body fat. Such a weird way of putting it, an adipose. The planet Adipose 3 is the first of several missing planets mentioned this series, a narrative thread resolved in The Stolen Earth. Rose's cameo was filmed alongside her scenes in Turn Left. It was removed from advanced screeners from the press, who kind of got to see it in advance for reviews. The positive reception to the cameo led Rusty Davies to add a third cameo that is, to The Poison Sky, in addition to one already planned and filmed for Midnight. So they ended up just using that footage they shot for Midnight in The Poison Sky. Rose's return wasn't a complete surprise, however. Yeah, like she appears on the TARDIS console when Donna's in there.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
It never made sense why she could do that in the main, but yeah, Rose's return wasn't a complete surprise, as a shot of Rose from turn left was actually included in the Series 4 trailer that screened in theaters. So,
Amazing.
and
Nice,
that was
nice
like
job,
weeks before
guys.
the episode aired. So that's, yeah, well done. The window cleaner cradle scene that was cut from Smith and Jones, we did talk about that as a fun fact when we covered that one, was finally used in this episode because they even reused the same prop. The initial confrontation between the Doctor, Donna, and Miss Foster was supposed to take place in this cradle, but budget and logistic concerns meant the setting had to be changed, and thus the sonic screwdriver and the sonic pen diversion whole thing that they could use to escape was added into the script. The adipose developed from Russell T Davies' idea that alien genetics were hidden in Botox treatments, resulting in the people injected turning into aliens. So it kind of turned that down a little bit, and that's probably for the best. This is the final episode until the Day of the Doctor to not have a pre-title sequence.
Oh,
there you go.
God, that's a while.
We get an absolutely banging theme tune for the series as well. Yeah, long while. Additional material shot for this episode was directed uncredited by Graham Harper, namely the reshoot of Bernard Cribbins and Rose's cameo, because obviously he directed Turn Left at the same time. This is the first reference to the bees disappearing, which again is explained in The Stolen Earth. And yes, definitely worth it, that one. Miss Foster was originally called Miss Rattigan. Russell T Davies felt Foster better encapsulated the character, so it was changed, and Rattigan was used as Luke's surname in the Sontaran stratagem instead. So well done. Recycling is good, everyone. Russell T Davies originally wanted to set the story in suburban London, with the spaceship sealing off part of the city in an enormous dome while an alien was hunted through the streets. So basically, he was going to do Smith and Jones again. It was dropped when the dome idea was actually used in the Simpsons movie. Goddamn Simpsons ruining everything. So that's why that didn't come about. When it became clear that Howard Atfield was too ill to be in further episodes of the show, Russell considered writing the character's death into Donna's story arc, making her a stronger person after dealing with the loss of her father. But then he probably remembered it's a family show, and maybe not. So we didn't quite go with that. It was just implied that he was, he passed away. Another point of development had the story set in an old house that hid a portal inside to a planet that had been overrun by vicious dog-like creatures. The last survivors of this world would have opened the portal to rid the world of the invaders. So this story could have been very, very different on multiple occasions, but we got some adipose instead, which I'm kind of pleased about. Russell T Davies based Miss Foster on Super Nanny star Joe Frost and Argentina philanthropist and politician Eva Perón. I don't know who that is, but that's who it was based on. And then while the script gave Donna's lines for her minor conversation to the Doctor, Catherine Tate was left to improvise the mime itself on the day of shooting. And we got an absolute gold mine. So there you go.
Excellent. Lovely fun facts.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Those two episode ideas, the one with the dome and the alien being hunted inside, that sounds very similar to the Hungry Earth, Cold Blood, when that little village gets sealed off, and then the one with the portal opening to let loose things that have devoured the planet sounds very much like one of the specials, the other one, the one that's not as good, with the double-decker bus.
Oh, Planet of the Dead, yeah.
It sounds very much like that. So those story ideas kind of came to fruition later on as well, which is good. Okay, that leaves one thing left to do, and that is ratings.
Yes.
Out of 10, what are you giving Partners in Crime?
I'm going to go for a 7.
Nice. I went for an 8.
Ooh.
Which is slightly bigger than yours. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was. I thought
it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, it depends who you ask.
It depends how you use it.
Yeah, sure. But yes, I rather enjoyed this episode. I thought it was a pretty good opener for series 4. Sets the tone, sets the scene, reintroduces some good characters, and yes, I'm quite intrigued to see where it goes next. And speaking of next, we won't be back next week as I will be away, so we won't have any chance to film or edit or upload, unfortunately. So in 2 weeks' time, we will be back with Fires of Pompeii, think that's the episode title.
But if you close your eyes.
Yes, that one. Where the Doctor and Donna travel to Pompeii, and there's other stuff going on, not just a volcano exploding. And we also see the introduction of Peter Capaldi and Karen Gillan into the show, which was a nice, happy coincidence. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in a couple of weeks. But what are you expecting from that episode? What do you remember?
I remember enjoying it. And yeah, kind of looking back on Doctor Who now, revisiting it, I always thought like, oh, a historical one, but I do tend to like them and lean towards them more and more so as I got older. So yeah, I always remember quite liking it. I think the design of like the pyroviles, like the big monsters, I always thought they looked really cool. And I remember getting a toy of them and I was very pleased. But yeah, I can't remember too much like specifically about the plot. Obviously we have like the people with the eyes on them, we have them predicting things. You're a lord of time, she's consuming dust or whatever and so turned to stone. So yeah, overall I remember enjoying it, and I think it's funny when I'm like, the resolution to this one was a bit it's just them doing this, and the resolution to this one is killing 10,000 people. Is
this what you wanted?
So,
is this what you wanted?
This is what I wanted. Yes, I want the stakes. Thank you. And it's a very emotional sequence from what I remember. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I really like, I think the conflict between the Doctor and Donna in this one, him being like, this is a fixed point, this is how it's going to be, and Donna's like, just save someone, you monster. And again, I do quite enjoy the Doctor and the companion kind of really disagreeing to that extent, like morally disagreeing. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much of that is actually explored in the story, or how much is just something I'm misremembering or whatever. So I don't think the Pyrovile themselves are like a super great monster in the episode, because they're fairly easily defeated, I think. Like water pistols and stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing exactly how I feel about it. I can't imagine hating it, but we'll see if it's another 42. I mean, this episode was also kind of like heat and fiery, so maybe it's going to be, maybe I just have a pattern when episodes are all about fire, heat, and I look on it fondly and remember it fondly, and then it turns out to be terrible. So we'll see, but I am looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll get some good stuff out of it.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's sort of similar for me. I'm looking forward to seeing how Donna reacts to traveling, actually leaving London for her first time, which will be good. I think the guest casting is fairly solid performance-wise, but we will see. I might be forgetting the worst ones. I also agree. I like the design of the Pyrovile, but I don't think they're necessarily the most threatening villain.
No.
But I think this is a similar partners in crime situation where it's more about the morality of the situation than the villain, like the monster. Which is good. Doctor Who can do that. It can have ones where it's just about the villains and the monsters, and it can have ones where it's about choices and actually having an impact, which is good.
But not if the Doctor's a female, of course.
Oh, of course. No, you can't do anything. You can't have any criticism of culture when it's a woman, I'm afraid.
No.
Soz lads. Turn it down, Chibnall, you woke bitch.
Yeah, even the next time trailer for this one at the end, when it's like, oh, women can't tell the fortune, and Donna's like, does this sassy remark. Yeah. Like, if that was in a next time trailer nowadays, people would be up in arms.
Yes, it is a sad state of affairs for some people, isn't it? They just can't get over it. But
oh well,
it is what it is. We won't let that depress us too much in the intervening weeks. But yeah, we will be back in a couple of weeks' time then for episode 2 of series 4, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.